How you doing, everybody? Glad to be here. I'm going to attempt something a little different, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about cowboy poetry. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. Excuse me. But it's big out west and all down through the Midwestern states, and they have big jamborees, and I've met a lot of really wonderful people on the internet. I've never met any of them really, and a lot of them award-winning writers, the same as Deidre, and gave me their work. One guy sent me a book, and we've recorded some of them. And there's different P.W. Conway is from, I'm going to do one of his today. I love his work. And he's from California. Meg Mawhinney, we've done 3 for her, and she's a super little gal out in BC. And she's wrote and run awards all over. We just finished one for her on Audie Murphy. And I forget, it was 150 or 60 clicks or something on it the first day and a half or something, 2 days. It's really gone over well. And the American Memorial Society or something, I believe it is, for Audie Murphy, which was the most decorated soldier in Second World War. And they really blew it up nice, how nice it was. Roger Turner, Woody Woodruff, we've done 2 or 3 of his. He's a great guy. And Mark Munzet and Jeff McKay, which is another Canadian boy. He's out in Winnipeg, and just a great writer and a great guy. And they wrote and have a lot of fun. But hi out there, guys, if you're listening or looking, why? Little gal here wants one. I think we'll do one. I got one here that I wanted to do for years, and I've only been doing this a couple of years. And I always had one in my dad's scrapbook, and it was a poem we used to do when we were kids. On a Saturday night, we'd sit around in a circle in front of him. That's a long time ago. And he would read this to us. And where it came from, I have no idea. Different ladies, including Deidre, knowledgeable poets, have commented on the word structure. Well, I presume the word structure means the way the words are put together. But it is, it sounds impressive to me, word structure. But and we have no idea where it came from or where it was written. Or it was took a while to get it copied off, but I've kept the old original copy. So I've traced it back well over 100 years. I was an older brother, and he's 90. And Dad read it to him, and he remembered it well. So where it goes back from there. But they talk about the 1890s in it, so it goes back quite a ways. One chance in 1,000. What makes my hair like silver at the age of 38? That's a story, stranger, that I seldom ever relate. For the horror of those moments I never shall forget, and when I think about them, why, I shudder even yet. It happened back in the 90s, and Billy, who's now 10, and as strong as the branch of a hickory, was a little shaver then. Just a rollicking ball of mischief who laughed in childish glee, and ever I tickled his dimple or bounced him on my knee. That season I well remember. We were camped down at the bend, and where the timber line commences and the walls of the canyon end. Just the cozy homemade party of, you shall see, of Billy and Billy's mother and her brother George and me. The gorge there, you remember, is fully half-mile wide, and a tangled path winds through it to the ledge on the other side. And then the ledge leads outward, a steep, uncertain trek, out through the head of the canyon to the timber farther back. That morning I well recall that we was loafing round the camp, and there'd been a mountain shower, and the air was chill and damp. Too cold for the long excursion that we'd planned to take, and far up the side of the mountain to the rim of the rock-bound lake. So we idled away the hours in various kinds of play, and not one of us had noticed why Billy'd slipped away. Till the call was made for luncheon, and we'd all gathered round, and nothing there but Billy. Billy couldn't be found. We searched the side of the mountain, the trails that led to the plain, and we searched the high and low for Billy, but searching seemed all in vain. Then we climbed the edge of the canyon on the thicks of death mesquite, and there in the yielding surface were the prints of his tiny feet. But they led out again from the tangle, the meagerest bit of a trail, and less plain it vanished, at last on the shelving shale. And then we counseled together, perplexed and at a loss, until the wife looked over the canyon and quietly pointed across. We followed her gaze from the tangle, and there at last we spied the figure of little Billy on the opposite mountainside. He was trudging along the mountain, a resolute sort of a chap, and one hand thrust into his pocket, and in the other he swung his cap. I glanced at my wife and noticed that her lips were moving then, and she reached out her arms towards Billy, far across the glen. Then she uttered a scream of terror, and her face went deathly white, and I looked where she was pointing. I'll never forget that sight. For there in that narrow pathway from its cavern on the hill crept a ravenous mountain lion straight towards Little Bill. There was nothing intervening the course of my gaze to bar, and there in those higher levels to the vision carried far. I'll never forget the picture, to centuries onward roll, and the horrors it presented and burned in my very soul. The beast that was angrily lashing its tail from side to side, the horrid fangs that glistened, the jaws that were open wide. While suspecting Little Billy trudged along the trail, and straight towards the beast that waited to rend him tooth and nail. I stood transfixed with terror, but my wife with ready wit caught up the long-range rifle and sprang to my side with it. She quickly measured the distance as near as the eye might see, and then climbed the sights a trifle and handed the gun to me. I knew my hand was shaking, so I passed it on to George, and he pointed with trembling fingers at the scene across the gorge. For years we'd camped together, and I'd yet to see a man whose eye was truer, a shot more straight than he. But he passed the gun back, saying, "This shot belongs to you. There's only one chance in 1,000. God grant that your aim is true." The monster was creeping closer, and I felt the cold sweat starts, and a hand with icy fingers kept closing round my heart. An awful spell possessed me, a numbness o'er me stole, and I couldn't have moved a finger to save my very soul. And the cat crept nearer and nearer, the sinewy, furious thing. I saw it measure the distance, and I saw it prepare to spring. I think my heart stopped pounding, and I stood there palsied mute, till I heard a voice somewhere, "For God's sakes, Henry, shoot." Then a cry awoke my senses, and the wheels of action caught, and I brought the gun to my shoulder, and I fired as quick as thought. Then the mist crept over my vision, and everything went dark, and I had no knowledge of whether or not I'd hit or missed my mark. But I plunged into the canyon, and I ran for years and years through tangles of apprehension and torrents of surging fears. And running, I prayed that somehow it might be the will of him that maketh the sparrow shall rescue my little Bill. And at last I saw him. The little fellow sat, with his chubby fist entangled in the fur of that monster cat. And he talked in childish prattle, and I heard him chiding say, "That great big naughty kitty, why didn't he come to play?" Then he cried when he last saw me, "Oh, Daddy, I'm so glad you've come. I was hunting for you and Mama, but I guess I lost it some. But I found this nice big kitty just coming to play with me, but he can't play now, Daddy, 'cause something hurted he." I took him up and I bore him with all his childish charms, and across the glen and laid him safe back in his mother's arms. And though she fondly kissed him, I could not help but see that her gaze was not on Billy, but was riveted on me. Keenly she looked upon me, and though she didn't speak, I noticed the tears were springing and stealing down her cheek. Then she brought a tiny mirror and held it before my eyes, and then I looked within it. I started in sheer surprise. For what I saw reflected in unrelenting truth was a crown of 80 winter above a face of youth. My hair in those few moments had changed, it was even so, from as dark as the raven's feather to as white as the new-blown snow.